Madam Chair, on that point, lobstermen in Maine, Admiral Papp, are now catching seahorses in their lobster traps, which is astonishing in terms of species moving north. A couple of points, Madam Chair, that I think might be helpful. We've been talking about icebreakers. To me, an icebreaker is a piece of infrastructure. It's like a highway. And a back-of-the-envelope calculation is it's about equivalent, one new icebreaker is equivalent of about 100 miles of interstate highway. Putting it in perspective and the importance of these icebreakers, I think, is important in terms of our national expenditures on infrastructure. Of course, we're doing a pretty poor job on infrastructure generally nationally, but we ought to be able to build the equivalent of 100 miles of interstate highway to provide access to this incredible new region. And the way I think of it is, it's as if we have discovered the Mediterranean Sea. It's an entirely new body of water that has been essentially locked up for most of human history with neighbors, and hopefully we're going to be able to develop and work in this new place peacefully, rather than have to go through centuries of war which surrounded the development of the Mediterranean Sea, because we have the international organizations that we never had before. And I think one of the important sort of data points on this is this chart of the Arctic, and the principal sea route now is right along the Russian coast. It's another reason that this has to be done. This route is usable in many cases today. This is the summer ice. The polar route will be many years. The Northwest Passage will come sooner than the polar route, but the principal route now is right along the Russian coast, and that's something that we need to take into account. It's another reason that these international relationships have to be developed in a systematic and deliberate way that I think make this so important. One final point, and then I wanted to ask Mr. Arnold a question. I would commend to the committee and to the witnesses and to our friends who are here today an animation prepared by NOAA. And you can find it if you go to YouTube and type in NOAA, NOAA, Arctic ice animation. You'll see the aged ice over since 1987 to 2014, and what you see over time is it's contracting. It's very dramatic. It makes the point much more dramatically than any of us could make in a speech. I commend that to you. I think it's so important. We do have, it's another connection between Maine and the Arctic. We have two companies in Maine, Ocean Renewable Power and Pika Industries, which are doing, Ocean Renewable Power actually has a tidal, an experimental tidal facility in Alaska. Pika is doing microgrid work that I think would be very interesting, because I'm sure, Madam Mayor, your electricity costs are probably above 70 cents a kilowatt hour. It's all imported diesel and it's not very clean. So renewables, it seems to me, is a huge opportunity for you. Mr. Arnold, you worked on port development around the world. You've been a navigator. Talk to me about the opportunities that are created by transit through the Arctic, and when do you see that coming to fruition, and what's the potential?
Sure. So one thing to point out is that moving freight by water is the greenest form of transportation when it comes to carbon emissions and on a freight per ton mile. So it's important to have that consideration when we're talking about trade and we're talking about the sea lanes over the Arctic. Another element to that Senator Senator Franken had pointed out was that a reduction in transit time is also a greener aspect to this, and that if you're reducing the amount of distance from, say, China or Japan or Korea in the United States eastern seaboard by anywhere from 20 to 50%, because that's the reduction that you would experience in the case of using either the northern sea route or Northwestern Passage, then you're reducing the equivalent amount of fuel consumption to move that same freight, which is going to move regardless of whether or not that sea route is open, but your fuel consumption and emissions related will be 20 to 50% less as well. So in regards to accessibility, there were already more than 70 ships in 2013 that transited the northern sea route, and that was with icebreaker assistance from Russia. They do charge for that. They're very cognizant of the opportunity that exists with charging every other country and every other ship owner for that. And there's a cost to it, so naturally they would charge for that. But that right now, everyone that we're working with, AIMSKIP, the CEO of AIMSKIP is working very closely with the Chinese shipping company COSCO, and we're really looking at kind of a gradual opening of the Northern Sea Route for the summer months over the next 5 to 10 years. This is a very long-term discussion, but it's the reason the investments in the icebreakers are happening now is because the moment you have that, you're extending the fringe or the shoulder season for when you can transit that passage.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.